Dr. Evelyn Cross adjusted her headset as the submersible Nereid descended into the Mariana Trench's deepest reaches. At 34, she had spent half her life studying the ocean's mysteries, but nothing had prepared her for what waited in the abyssal darkness below. Depth, 11,000 meters and descending, announced her pilot, Rodriguez, his voice crackling through the comm system. "You sure about this, Doc? The sonar readings down here are weird." Evelyn peered through the porthole at the alien. Landscape of the deep sea floor. Bioluminescent creatures drifted past like living stars. But something else caught her attention. A faint, pulsing glow emanated from a crevice between two massive rock formations. "Take us closer to that light source," she instructed, her pulse quickening with scientific curiosity. As they approached, the glow resolved into something impossible. Nestled in the rocky outcropping was a crystalline pod, roughly human-sized, emitting a soft blue-green radiance. Its surface was perfectly smooth, almost organic in appearance, yet clearly artificial. "Jesus," Rodriguez whispered. "What the hell is that thing?" Evelyn's mind raced. The pod was clearly not of terrestrial origin, yet here it was, embedded in Earth's deepest trench, as if it had been waiting for eons. "We need to bring it up." The retrieval took 6 grueling hours. Once aboard the research vessel Cousteau, Evelyn couldn't take her eyes off the mysterious artifact. The pod was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. As her team gathered around, she noticed hairline cracks beginning to appear across its surface. "It's responding to our presence," she murmured, documenting everything. "The cracks are spreading in a geometric pattern, almost like—" The pod suddenly split open with a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Steam rose from within, carrying a scent reminiscent of ozone and starlight. Inside lay a figure that was unmistakably humanoid, yet utterly alien. The being was tall and slender, with opalescent skin that shifted between silver and pearl. Its features were delicate, almost ethereal, with high cheekbones and a narrow chin. But it was the eyes that took Evelyn's breath away. Large and luminous, they were the deep violet of twilight skies, flecked with what looked like actual stars. As the creature's eyes fluttered open, they fixed immediately on Evelyn. In that instant, something fundamental shifted in her perception of reality. Pain lanced through her skull as images flooded her mind. Vast cities beneath twin purple suns, beings moving through crystalline gardens, music that could be felt rather than heard. The creature sat up slowly, its movements fluid as water. When it spoke, no sound emerged from its lips, yet Evelyn heard its voice as clearly as her own thoughts. "I am Nyx of the Andorian Drift Cities. I have traveled far to reach your world, and I am dying." Evelyn staggered backward, her hand pressed to her temple. Around her, her team members looked confused, clearly unable to hear the psychic communication. But she could feel Nyx's presence in her mind now, a gentle warmth that seemed to ease her initial panic. "Do not fear me. Evelyn Cross of the Deep. Waters, I mean no harm to your kind, but I carry within me knowledge of a great darkness that follows in my wake. Your world is not safe. None are safe while the Void Wanderer hunts across the stars." As Nyx's thoughts intertwined with hers, Evelyn realized with growing wonder and terror that her life, her very identity, would never be the same. The alien's consciousness was already beginning to merge with her own, and she could feel her human perspective expanding to encompass experiences no earthly mind was meant to contain. The discovery that would change humanity's destiny had begun with a simple deep-sea expedition. Now, as alien memories cascaded through her awareness, Evelyn understood that she was no longer just a marine biologist. She was becoming something entirely new, a bridge between two worlds that might be the key to saving them both. Dr. Marcus Holloway had studied the human mind for 20 years, but nothing in his psychiatric training had prepared him for what he witnessed in the isolation ward of the Pacific Research Institute. Through the reinforced glass, he watched Dr. Evelyn Cross sit motionless beside the alien being they called Nix, both figures seemingly lost in silent communion. "How long have they been like this?" Marcus asked Dr. Patricia Vance, the facility director. 18 hours straight, Patricia replied, her voice tight with concern. "Evelyn's vital signs are stable, but her brain activity is off the charts. We're seeing neural patterns we've never encountered before." Marcus reviewed the EEG readouts with growing fascination and alarm. Evelyn's brainwaves were synchronized with readings from the electromagnetic sensors placed near Nix. It was as if their minds were operating on the same frequency, creating a feedback loop of consciousness. "We need to separate them," Patricia continued. "Evelyn hasn't eaten or slept since the initial contact. She's deteriorating physically." "No," Marcus said firmly. "If we interrupt this process now, we might damage both of them permanently. This isn't possession or mental illness. It's communication on a level we barely comprehend." Over the next week, Marcus documented the extraordinary transformation occurring within Evelyn. During brief moments of lucidity, she shared fragments of what she was experiencing. Nix's people, the Andorians, had evolved beyond verbal language. Centuries ago, developing a form of collective consciousness that allowed them to share thoughts, emotions, and memories directly. "It's beautiful, Marcus," Evelyn whispered during one of her coherent periods. "Imagine never feeling truly alone, always being connected to others who understand you completely. But it's also why they're so vulnerable." Through her connection with Nix, Evelyn learned of the cosmic predator that had destroyed the Andorian civilization. The entity, which Nix called the Void Wanderer, existed partially outside normal spacetime. It fed on psychic energy, but more specifically, on the more trauma of severed connections between minds. "It doesn't destroy civilizations with weapons," Evelyn explained, her violet-flecked eyes reflecting Nix's influence. "It corrupts the bonds between individuals, turning love into suspicion, trust into paranoia. It makes people afraid to connect with one another, then feeds on their isolation and despair." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he processed this information. "And it's coming here?" Evelyn nodded weakly. "Nix escaped in the last functioning drift pod when her world fell. But the Wanderer followed her psychic trail across the galaxy. She came to Earth, hoping to find allies, being strong enough to resist its influence." As days passed, Marcus noticed disturbing changes in the research facility's atmosphere. Arguments erupted over trivial matters. Colleagues who had worked together for years suddenly couldn't stand each other. The cafeteria staff began hoarding supplies, convinced others were stealing their portions. Most alarming was his own transformation. Marcus found himself questioning Patricia's motives, suspecting she was hiding information from him. He caught himself analyzing every conversation for signs of deception, even with trusted friends. "It's already starting, isn't it?" he asked Evelyn during their final interview before the government intervened. "The Wanderer's influence reaches far ahead of its physical arrival," she confirmed. "It's like a cosmic infection, spreading through the collective unconscious of any species it targets." "But Marcus, you have to understand something important." She gripped his hand with surprising strength, and for a moment he felt an echo of her connection with Nix. The sensation was overwhelming, a vast network of consciousness stretching across impossible distances, filled with love, understanding, and shared purpose. "Humans are different from Nix's people," Evelyn continued. "You're naturally more individualistic, more resistant to collective influence. That independence your species prizes so highly might be the key to survival. The Wanderer succeeds by breaking existing bonds, but humans are already comfortable standing alone when necessary. As security personnel entered to separate them permanently, Evelyn's final words echoed in Marcus's mind. Don't let them turn this into a weapon. The only way to defeat the Wanderer is through willing connection, not forced isolation. Watching Evelyn being taken away, Marcus realized that his role in this cosmic drama was just beginning. The psychiatric researcher had become humanity's first witness to an alien consciousness, and soon he would have to convince a skeptical world that their greatest enemy wasn't arriving in ships or armies, but in the spaces between human hearts. Dr. Zara Okafor pressed her security badge against the scanner and stepped into the classified briefing room, deep beneath the Pentagon. As the government's leading xenobiologist, she had been summoned to analyze the most extraordinary discovery in human history. What she found instead was a nightmare unfolding in real time. General Patricia Stone, head of the Anomalous Phenomena Division, gestured toward the holographic display showing global incident reports. Red dots peppered every continent, each representing civil unrest, diplomatic breakdowns, or unexplained social violence. Dr. Okafor, we've brought you here because your expertise in evolutionary biology might help us understand what we're dealing with, General Stone began. 3 weeks ago, we recovered an alien entity and a human subject who claims to be in psychic contact with it. Zara studied the classified files on Dr. Evelyn Cross and the being designated Subject X1. The medical reports painted a disturbing picture. Human DNA showing signs of systematic alteration. Brain chemistry unlike anything in medical literature. And most troubling of all, documented instances of precognitive awareness. Where are they now? Zara asked. Separated for security reasons. Dr. Cross is in our Nevada facility, while the entity remains at the Pacific Institute under military guard. But that's not why you're here. General Stone manipulated the display, showing a timeline of global events. Every one of these incidents began after we contained the alien. Regional conflicts that were stable for decades suddenly exploded. Allied nations are withdrawing from treaties over minor disputes. Mass protests are turning violent worldwide. Zara felt a chill of recognition. In her studies of ecosystem collapse, she had seen similar patterns. This looks like a cascade failure, she murmured. Something is systematically disrupting social bonds across the entire planet. Our psychiatric consultant, Dr. Holloway, believes the alien is somehow responsible. He claims it's broadcasting some kind of psychic influence that makes people paranoid and aggressive. May I speak with Dr. Cross? Zara requested. A video call to Nevada revealed a woman transformed. Evelyn Cross looked fragile, her once brown eyes now streaked with violet, but her voice carried an urgency that cut through the static. Dr. Okafor, you have to listen to me, Evelyn pleaded. Nyx isn't causing the chaos. She's trying to warn us about what's coming. There's something in space, something that destroys civilizations by turning them against themselves. Zara leaned forward. Describe this entity. It exists partially outside our dimension, feeding on psychic energy generated by fear and isolation. It doesn't need to physically arrive to begin its work. It can influence minds across interstellar distances, planting seeds of suspicion and hatred. If that's true, why should we trust your alien friend? How do we know she's not the source of this influence? Evelyn's laugh was bitter. Because Nyx's people evolved to share consciousness freely. They were connected, trusting, unified. That's exactly why they were so vulnerable when the Wanderer broke those connections. They couldn't survive alone. Over the following days, Zara conducted her own analysis. She cross-referenced the timeline of global incidents with astronomical data, searching for any correlation with external phenomena. What she found made her blood run cold. Deep space monitoring stations had detected unusual gravitational anomalies moving through the outer solar system. The disturbances didn't match any known celestial mechanics, and they were accelerating toward Earth's position. General Stone, Zara reported during an emergency briefing. I believe Dr. Cross is telling the truth. We're not dealing with an invasion in any conventional sense. This is a predator that evolved to hunt entire civilizations. Assuming that's correct, what do you recommend? Zara pulled up her analysis on the main screen. The entity succeeds by isolating individuals, making them afraid to trust or connect with others. Every authoritarian regime in history has used similar tactics on a smaller scale. But humans have one advantage Nix's species didn't have, which is we're already individualistic. We're comfortable with personal boundaries and independent thought. The trick isn't to become more isolated, but to consciously choose connection despite our natural tendencies toward suspicion. General Stone frowned. That sounds like psychological theory, not military strategy. Sometimes the most effective defense isn't a weapon, Zara replied. It's a choice. But we need to act quickly. The influence is accelerating, and I estimate we have weeks, maybe days, before it reaches critical mass. As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Reports flooded in of military units turning against each other, government officials accusing colleagues of treason, and civilian populations demanding blood from their leaders. Staring at the chaos unfolding on the monitors, Zara realized that humanity's greatest test wasn't arriving from the stars. It was already here, whispering in the spaces between human hearts, turning humanity's greatest strength, their fierce independence, into their ultimate weakness. Captain James Rivera stood in the command center of the underground military complex, watching his world fall apart through satellite feeds. Riots consumed major cities across 6 continents. Allied nations had severed diplomatic ties over trivial border disputes that had been peacefully resolved for decades. Even within his own facility, soldiers were eyeing each other with suspicion, hands never far from their weapons. Sir, we have new orders from the Pentagon, Sergeant Collins reported. His voice strained. We're to begin Phase 2 of this xenobiological weapons program immediately. James read the classified orders with growing disgust. They wanted him to use the aliens' telepathic abilities as a weapon, to somehow harness Nix's consciousness and turn it against enemy nations. The irony wasn't lost on him. They were planning to fight the very influence that was tearing humanity apart by weaponizing the being trying to save them. Collins, I want you to arrange a meeting with Dr. Cross, alone. Sir, regulations clearly state. I don't care about regulations right now, Sergeant. Look around you. Half our personnel are ready to shoot the other half over imagined slights. Traditional military protocol isn't working. The meeting took place in the facility's medical wing, where Evelyn Cross sat in isolation, her transformation now so complete that looking at her was like seeing a human-shaped constellation. Her skin held an opalescent quality, and when she spoke, James could swear he heard harmonics that existed only in his mind. Captain Rivera, she greeted him without looking up. You're here because you've realized that following orders might not be the same as protecting your country. How did you? Nix and I share more than just consciousness now. We share perspective. I can see the patterns forming around us, the way the Wanderer's influence spreads through networks of authority and command. James sat across from her, noting how the other personnel in the room seemed calmer in her presence. The brass wants to turn your abilities into a weapon. They think if we can broadcast your alien friend's telepathy, we can control enemy populations. Evelyn's laugh held no humor. They still don't understand. The Wanderer doesn't attack civilizations through their leaders or their armies. It attacks through their deepest connections. Every attempt to weaponize telepathy will only accelerate its influence. Then what do we do? My orders are clear. Your orders come from minds that are already compromised. Look at the pattern, James. The more authority figures try to control the situation through force and isolation, the faster society breaks down. The Pentagon, the UN Security Council, every major government, they're all making the same mistakes. Nix's people made. James pulled up the latest intelligence reports on his tablet. Country after country was declaring martial law, closing borders, severing communications with former allies. It's like a virus of paranoia. Exactly. And the cure isn't more isolation. It's conscious choice to maintain connection despite fear. Over the next 48 hours, James watched his facility tear itself apart. Dr. Holloway was accused of being an alien, sympathizer, and placed under arrest. Dr. Okoffer's research was classified as dangerous and destroyed. Soldiers who had served together for years drew weapons on each other over suspected betrayals that existed only in their increasingly paranoid minds. The breaking point came when Colonel Morrison arrived with orders to vivisect Nix for military intelligence. James found himself in the alien's containment cell, staring at a being that seemed to glow with inner light despite its obvious suffering. When Nix looked at him, James felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood: complete understanding, without judgment. Through the telepathic connection, he glimpsed what Earth could become if humanity chose unity over fear. "I can't let them hurt you," he whispered. "I am already dying, James Rivera." Nix's voice echoed in his mind. "Separation from consciousness bond is killing me slowly. But Evelyn carries part of my essence now. Through her, my people's knowledge can survive. What do you need me to do?" "Choose connection over command, trust over authority, love over fear. The Wanderer feeds on severed bonds. But humans have something my people lacked: the ability to stand alone when necessary. Then choose. To reconnect when it matters most." When Colonel Morrison arrived with his surgical team, James made his choice. Instead of following orders, he triggered the facility's emergency protocols and helped both Evelyn and Nix escape into the chaos of the collapsing world above Dot as they emerged into a night sky filled with the glow of burning cities. James understood that he was no longer a soldier following orders. He had become something new, a guardian of humanity's potential, choosing to protect the bridge between worlds rather than destroy it. The real war was just beginning, but for the first time since the crisis started, James felt hope. Because sometimes the most courageous military action isn't following orders, but knowing when to break them for the sake of something greater. The abandoned observatory atop Mount Wilson had become humanity's unlikely sanctuary. As civilization crumbled in the valleys below, Evelyn Cross, though that name no longer fully described what she had become, stood among the silent telescopes, her consciousness spanning dimensions that human language couldn't express. She was no longer entirely human, nor entirely Andorian. The fusion with Nix's essence had created something unprecedented, a hybrid consciousness capable of bridging two incompatible ways of existence. Through her transformed perception, she could see the Wanderer's true form approaching Earth, writhing absence in space-time that devoured the connections between living minds. "We are running out of time," Nix's voice whispered through their shared awareness. "The Wanderer has begun its final approach. Soon it will arrive physically." And then Evelyn felt the alien's despair like a weight in her chest. She had witnessed the memories of a dozen worlds falling to this cosmic predator, their populations reduced to isolated, terrified individuals who forgot how to trust, how to love, how to work together for survival. But Earth was different. Through the global communication networks that somehow still functioned despite the chaos, Evelyn reached out to the scattered remnants of humanity. She found Marcus Holloway hiding in his research facility, documenting the psychological effects of the Wanderer's influence. She touched the mind of Zara Okoffer, who had convinced a small group of scientists to continue their work in underground bunkers. She connected with Captain Rivera, who was leading a growing network of military personnel who had chosen conscience over orders. Most importantly, she reached ordinary people, teachers comforting frightened children, doctors treating patients. Despite ethnic conflicts, neighbors sharing food with strangers, families refusing to let fear break their bonds. Do you see it? She projected to Nix's consciousness. Humans don't just connect through shared thoughts like your people did. They connect through shared choices, shared actions, shared struggles. The Wanderer can plant seeds of fear, but it can't force humans to act on that fear. Working through the network of willing minds, Evelyn began to implement a strategy that would have been impossible for any single species. Unlike the Andorians' collective consciousness or humanity's fierce individualism, she could offer a third path, conscious choice to connect. She helped establish communication hubs where people could verify information and counter the Wanderer's psychological warfare. She guided the formation of mixed communities where former enemies worked together on survival projects, proving that cooperation was stronger than competition. Most crucially, she began teaching others how to recognize the Wanderer's influence in their own thoughts. Fear is natural. She broadcasted through every available channel. Her message translated into dozens of languages. Suspicion is normal when facing the unknown. But we can choose not to let those feelings control our actions. We can choose to reach out instead of pulling away. As the Wanderer's physical form entered the solar system, its psychic pressure became overwhelming. Governments collapsed entirely. Infrastructure failed. But something unexpected emerged from the chaos: human resilience. People who had never met began working together to maintain power grids. Scientists from opposing nations shared research to understand their enemy. Children formed friendships across cultural boundaries that adults had thought impossible to bridge. The Wanderer's assault reached its peak as the entity materialized in Earth's atmosphere, a shifting void that seemed to devour light itself. Through her hybrid senses, Evelyn felt its hunger, its rage at finding a world that refused to break the way others had. In that critical moment, she made a choice that would have been impossible for either human or Andorian consciousness alone. Instead of fighting the Wanderer or fleeing from it, she opened her hybrid mind completely, offering herself as a conduit for every conscious being on Earth. The connection was overwhelming. Billions of minds touched hers simultaneously. Every human capable of choice, every animal with even primitive awareness, every thinking being on the planet. But instead of the chaos she expected, Evelyn discovered something beautiful. Each consciousness remained distinct, individual, free to choose its own path. But they were also connected by threads of shared experience, mutual support, and conscious decision to care for one another. It wasn't the collective unity that had made the Andorians vulnerable, nor the isolation that the Wanderer sought to impose. It was something entirely new, voluntary connection between free individuals. The Wanderer recoiled from this hybrid network. It had evolved to feed on severed bonds and enforced isolation, but it couldn't digest connections that were freely chosen and constantly renewed. Like a virus encountering an immune system it had never faced, the cosmic predator found itself unable to process what humanity had become. As the entity retreated into deep space, seeking easier prey among the stars, Evelyn felt herself settling into her new role. She was no longer Dr. Cross, the marine biologist, nor fully Nix of the Andorian drift cities. She had become something that had never existed before, a bridge between worlds, a guardian of conscious choice. Through her transformed awareness, she could sense other worlds, other species facing their own versions of cosmic threats. Earth had survived its test, but the universe held many forms of darkness. Looking up at the stars with eyes that saw across dimensions, Evelyn smiled. Humanity had learned to choose connection without losing independence, to work together without sacrificing individuality. They had become something worth protecting, and something capable of protecting others. The real journey was just beginning.